You've tuned into Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes. Your access to success strategies and more to help you move onward and upward with your life. Listen in each week as she interviews others who have really taken their essence to the next level and truly unpaused their life. Now here's your host, Dr. Callie Estes.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. This is Dr. Callie Estes, and I am founder of the Addictions Academy, the Addictions Coach, and Rehab Rescue. Welcome to Unpause Your Life. This is a great podcast where we showcase people who have done something extraordinary with their life. I welcome you, and I hope you enjoy all of our guests.
On my way, found a reason to wake up another day.
You are listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes of the Addictions Coach and the Addictions Academy. I'm very excited for my guest today. I have Jam Alker with me, and I want to tell you just a little bit about him and let him fill you in. Soon after he found heroin, Jam Alker put down the guitar and did not pick it up again for 10 plus years. What followed would be what he calls the most toxic relationship I've ever been in. A decade of extreme highs and lows that brought him literally to his knees, begging for a long-needed reawakening. What I found out was that drugs were not my problem. Drugs were the solution to my problem. I've been talking about that for years, so I'm so excited Jam is with us. For Jam, this problem manifested itself not just in addiction, but egotism, materialism, and compulsiveness. He found his way back to his guitar and began to spin his experience into stories told through music. These stories explore life's dark, gritty underbelly and the despair that can compel bad decisions without judgment or condemnation, but often with hope. Welcome, Jam.
Thank you, Callie. I'm excited to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So you and I share the same philosophy that drugs aren't the problem. Drugs are the solution to a problem. So start me at the beginning. You were a musician first before you found heroin, correct?
That's correct.
And then you found heroin, which of course is way better than anything else in the world, right?
Oh, yeah. It did wonders for me. It worked until it didn't. It worked until it didn't.
Tell me about that. Tell me what it was like being this sober musician, and then all of a sudden what happened, how you stop, and how you get yourself out of it.
Well, sure. So in my 20s, or really in my teens, I decided that that the music was what I wanted to do, and that I wanted to be a successful musician. And for lack of a better term, I wanted to be a rock star. So in my late teens, early 20s, I moved down into the city of Chicago, started a band. Band was relatively successful. Went out and did some touring, and made a few records, played in front of a lot of people, and did all of the things that you imagine go along with that lifestyle. So, my addiction was always present, but my addiction manifested in a lot of different ways through my 20s. It manifested through my ego. Sometimes it manifested through anger, because I didn't necessarily get what I wanted or how I wanted it. It manifested to some degree through the use of drugs and alcohol. But, what I know now is that in order to stop, if you truly are an addict, the consequences have to be so dire that your life becomes completely unmanageable, and you are no longer able to continue with that lifestyle. Now, when you're living that lifestyle, in the world of rock and roll, oftentimes the problems don't get so out of hand. The consequences are not so dire that you cannot continue to be successful. And so I had success. I had success with money also. I made some money, and then I put that money into some real estate, and that turned into making more money. And I built a recording studio and a record label, and all of these things that I did allowed me to to continue to live that lifestyle of addiction and compulsion. And really what it was this drive to do all of these things because I was empty inside. I was miserable inside. I have that thing that a lot of addicts and alcoholics refer to as that hole inside of them that they kept trying to fill it. And I had that hole, and I tried to fill it in so many different ways, whether it was drugs and alcohol, or whether it was attention, it was relationships, or money. And I kept thinking, well, this isn't going to fill the hole, so maybe the next thing will, and maybe the next thing will. And none of these things filled that hole inside. So, I was well on my way to being a millionaire. I had performed in front of, thousands of screaming fans, signed autographs, done all of these different things that people would think, wow, your life is so amazing. You must have been so happy. You had it all. But it's not true. I was dead inside. I was miserable inside, and I didn't understand why none of these things gave me that happiness that I so desperately was chasing after. And so then I found heroin, and heroin did not fill that hole. Heroin did not make the misery go away, but it numbed me to it. And so this was finally something that made that discomfort of life, that restless, irritable, and discontentedness that I had felt since childhood, it made it go away temporarily. We know that opiates are physical painkillers, but they're also emotional painkillers. And I used it as a way to numb myself to those discomforts of life for a very long time.
Let me ask you this question. So you go from being, I don't want to say a normal person, but a musician that's not considered a recovery musician. You have a battle with heroin, and now you reemerge. Are you considered a recovery musician, or are you still a musician in recovery? How do you define that, and what does that mean to you?
For sure. So if people ask me, I say that I'm a musician who's in recovery. I have a lot of friends who are also musicians in recovery who get very bent out of shape when they're referred to as recovery musicians. I myself, I'm not concerned with labels. I'm not concerned with how other people want to try to classify me. I don't speak literally in my music about addiction or recovery. My music's more metaphoric, more poetic. Myself personally, obviously, I speak about recovery a lot. So there are people who call me a recovery musician, and if that's what they want to call me, if I'm helping them, I have no problem with it. But I consider myself a musician who's in recovery.
So do you find that there's additional pressure now that you're public about your struggle for the recovery community coming to you looking for something you may or may not be able to provide?
There's a great deal of pressure if I decide to look at it that way. I try to be an example. I fully understand that my message and, being blessed with the ability to connect to others through music and the platform that it has created for me, that I have a responsibility to try my best to continue to live the life that I'm living. So I think that it holds me to a certain standard, but I love that. I love the fact that it does. It gives me additional motivation to continue on the path that I'm on. Sometimes it's difficult when people reach out to me and I'm not able to provide them with as much help as I would like. My time gets spread more and more thin all the time as I continue to be blessed with this success in my recovery. I'm not able to be as present for as many people as I would like. So that can be difficult when I know someone's reaching out and they just need someone to sit there and listen to them. And I just don't have as much time as I did earlier on to be able to do that. So that can be pressure when I want to try to be there for someone and I can't necessarily be there for everybody who's reaching out to me. But overall, knowing that my story is helping others and that what I'm doing is providing inspiration to others far outweighs any of the potential stresses or pressures that it could put on me.
That's a good answer. So I know for a lot of musicians that are in recovery, my husband's a drummer. He's in recovery for heroin, and he gets asked all the time for help. And he's like, well, I'm a musician first. I can help you, but I'm not, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a therapist. I don't have all the answers. I know what works for me and can give you that advice and point you in the right direction. And I see a lot of people turning to the musicians now because people are getting public. They're saying, hey, this is what I did. I'm in recovery. It's okay to talk about it. The stigma's gone. So there's that whole dichotomy of, I'm a musician first and I'm a helper second. So I see a lot of that. Now I know you're part of the Music is Medicine group. Can you talk a little bit about that and what they do and how it's different than, say, other things and other organizations?
Sure. Music's Medicine Foundation is a nonprofit that I'm on the board and help my good friend Chastity Fox as much as I can with it. It's her foundation. She started it after her brother, who is a musician, died from a heroin overdose. And we've done a few music festivals and are continuing to try to raise money to provide resources for those who are still struggling, and in cases where we can show them how music can become a part of their recovery or how music can be used to help them. We're trying to do that. We're doing these benefit concerts in the past and doing them in the future, where it's a music event where there's also information about treatment resources, peer-to-peer recovery, as many different resources as are possible. But we found that if you do an event and it's specifically just a recovery event or an addiction event or a overdose awareness event, it's very difficult to get people in the community to come out to these kind of events. I've been to those sort of events and there are 2 or 3 people there, and it sickens me. But if we make it a music event, where the event is about music, and as a side to that, we provide information about recovery, information about treatment resources, information about peer-to-peer recovery, information about, the 12-step fellowship. People come to a music event and then will then hear the message. So that's something that's very important and near and dear to my heart, and was also near and dear to Chastity's heart. So we partnered together to do everything we can to try to do more of these types of events in the future, where music is the source and music is what brings the people together. And while they're there, we can provide them with this other information that they might not get otherwise.
That's awesome. That's a great platform for delivery, because music is it's nonverbal in a sense that you can feel it and you can be part of it, and you don't really have to know the words to a song. You just know it feels good. And it really does change the audience in terms of energy. Wouldn't you say, depending on what you're playing?
Oh, absolutely. Everything that I do in my professional life and in so much of my private life now is about trying to help people understand the healing power of music in treatment and in recovery. Music takes you places that I don't know any other medium can take you. We know that so much of recovery and healing from addiction happens in the heart and the soul, not in the head. And there's no better way to get someone out of their head and into their heart and into their soul than the use of music. And beyond that, music, particularly music that speaks about the struggles of, the struggles of the human condition, which, if we get back to that original thing we talked about, where drugs are not my problem, drugs are my solution to my problem. So we talk about then what is the problem? The problem are the things that exist within the human condition, the loneliness, the desperation, isolation, anxiety, depression, all of these things that just we as addicts have taken a very extreme form of numbing behavior that has dire consequences. But if you take away the drugs, which are not the problem, they're a solution, and go back to the problem, it's these things. So music has a way to be able to take you back to these things, particularly if someone else, I was saying through my music, it's not literal, it's very much more metaphoric, where I'm talking about these struggles. So I'm talking about these struggles, which, yes, for me, manifested as addiction, but these are struggles that everyone goes through. So one of the most important things that I find in recovery is community, and community can exist on a one-to-one level, which is empathy. So when you hear a song and that songwriter is telling your stories, expressing your emotions, yes, that person has been through what I've been through. They felt what I felt. I am not alone in the struggle. that is incredibly healing. And that's just one of the many examples of how music can be so healing in the recovery process.
Right. That makes a good point. So even if you're struggling to stay sober or struggling to get where you need to go, if you can get into music and you start to feel better. I know for me, when I go to the gym, and the gym is where I got sober. I didn't do it in a meeting. That was my thing. So when I go there, I can't work out without a headset. I have to have music, and it can't just be any music. It's got to be rock. It's got to be metal. It's got to be, rap. It's kind of got to be like hardcore stuff because that motivates me and I get a good workout. And then when I'm done, I'm like, yes, but if I put on like Britney Spears, forget it. I want to shoot myself. It just doesn't work. So music is super powerful.
We talk about that. So I also work with Recovery Unplugged, and we talk about that in terms of, triggers. And triggers are usually referred to, the negative connotations behind triggers. But triggers can also be something you can be triggered in a positive manner. So something that we do is we try to help people put together playlists that are positive, that are going to put them in a positive place. So when they're maybe in a position where they're feeling, some kind of way that might take them down the wrong path towards potentially using, well, we can help them to set up a playlist that is full of songs that are going to trigger them in a positive emotional way and are going to take them in a different direction. So music can be used in so many ways in recovery to help with those underlying struggles.
And that's awesome. So talk a little bit about Recovery Unplugged. I've done some work with them and Paul over there and Richie, and I love the program. I love what they're doing. Tell our listeners a little bit about that, because they are very unique and kind of the pioneers in that sense.
Absolutely. So music is infused into all aspects of the recovery process. So what I mentioned about different songs, whether it's used to motivate, whether it's used to push you in a certain direction when you may be heading in another direction, or like I said, when music can help you to touch on some of those emotions. We have to feel. It is imperative that we feel our emotions in recovery. And those of us who have numbed ourselves through addiction to our emotions are so oftentimes infants when it comes to dealing with how to express emotions. So music can help you to start to touch on some of those deeper, darker areas, some of the things you have to process in your recovery, or you're in danger of going back up. These things have to be processed. So music is infused into all aspects of the treatment process to help a person to heal. Again, I keep coming back to, you peel away the layers of the onion as to why, what is at the base of addiction. And I don't know if you're familiar with the amazing doctor and researcher, Gabor Mate, who says, don't ask why the addiction, ask why the pain, which comes back to the same thing we were talking about before, which is drugs are not my problem. They were the solution to my problem. Okay. So what is the problem? And again, it always comes back to that trauma. So we have to figure out different ways to get to it. And what I've found, and I'm not a doctor, but I do this music group, and I've done this therapeutic music group up in Chicago a number of times. And when I was there, I met an intern there who said she had just come from a conference on trauma that weekend. And they said that one of the best ways to deal with the underlying trauma is through experiential therapies. And music can be such an incredible experiential therapy. So using it as experiential therapy is something that we try to do as much as possible at Recovery Unplugged, again, to help people to heal the underlying trauma that is really what is so important in healing and finding a path to recovery.
It's so interesting you brought up Gabor Mate. I agree with everything he says except the trauma, because I've been doing this 25 years, and I have people that have no trauma but are addicts, and there's no explanation. So I started studying Ken Blum and talking about reward deficiency syndrome. And I was treating my patients or my clients that didn't have trauma with Ken Blum's theory, and it worked, which is that your brain, a smaller part of your brain, the reward side is just smaller than other people. So it takes more stimulus to feel the same amount of normalcy that someone else would feel. So it's so interesting, because I'd love to hear the two of them debate, because they're complete opposite ends of the spectrum. And the only thing they agree on is at the end of the day that addiction is not the problem, it's the solution, which is kind of cool because it's like all the big theorists are agreeing on that, which we know addiction isn't your problem. It's your solution. What is your problem? What is your issue? What is your underlying cause? Yes. And that's finally, I think, how we're treating it, because we've always treated it backwards. You come in, you admit you have a problem, you admit you're powerless, and then it's all about your addiction. And no one ever says, well, how'd you get here?
Right.
How did someone go from being a musician to being a heroin addict? How did you get there? You didn't just one day go, hey, you know what? This looks like fun. I'm going to try this and just shut down my music. Something happened, Right. So it becomes the question of, well, what happened? And then if we solve what happened, bam, you're back out doing music and doing it wonderfully and beautifully and sharing your story with the community. So it's definitely, you have a story of a hope that needs to be shared. I'm hoping you put a book out, which I think would go really well, with your story and things like that. And for your followers, have you ever thought about that?
I've certainly thought about it. It's been sort of a back burner thing with everything that's going on with music and the speaking events that I've been doing. I just, have a documentary that was filmed about my story that we're in the process of editing which should come out next year. So it is something that is on the horizon at some point, but it hasn't been a huge priority. And I need to get back in the studio and put out some new music pretty soon as well.
That would be great. I think all of our fans would love to hear it. And can you tell them where to find you if they want to hear your music or see your shows? I see you've got a whole huge playlist of places you're going to be, which is excellent. Where can they find you?
The best way to find all of the information about me is to go to my website, which is jamalker.com, JAMALKER.com. It has a calendar of events. It has the links to all of the social media platforms. So rather than sitting here listing, a million different places to check me out, if you just go to jamalker.com, you can find everything there.
Awesome. And thank you for coming on. I appreciate it so much. We're going to try to put a little bit of your music clip in here as well, so people can get a sampling of you, and we'll put all your links and everything up so that people can find it right on the website.
That sounds great. Thank you so much, Callie.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, and you are listening to Unpause Your Life with Dr. Callie Estes.
Shot. Well, I know my heart is good. It just needs a new start. So take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Ow. On top, but I do not rightly recollect the drop. Oh, but the ravages of gravity have left a mark. So take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Take me to the junkyard. My belly aches, my hands shake. fake. My teeth are cracked, my lungs are black, my jaw slack. My skin crawls, my shoulders fall, my chin is weak, and my bones are creaking, my belly aches, and my hands are shaking, my tongue is fake, for God's sake. My teeth are cracked, and my lungs are black, and my jaw is slack, so send me back, send me back, send me back, send me back. I'm falling apart. Well, I do believe this body is shot. Well, I know my heart is good, it just needs a new start. So take me to the junkyard and sell me for parts. Take me to the junkyard